The librarian told me, kids like me don't know anything, until the police were called. I was 9 when the new volunteer, Mr. Gary, started working in the library. I recognized him instantly from a website my mom showed me. These are people who hurt children. If you ever see any of them, you tell an adult immediately. I walked straight to Miss Lyon's desk, my hands already shaking. That's the man from the website my mom showed me, I whispered, trying not to point. The one with people who hurt kids. She barely glanced up from her computer. What website, sweetie? The one with the bad people. I remember his face, the scar, and everything. Miss Lyons' expression changed and she sighed heavily. You're too young to judge adults. That's very rude. But he's on the computer. I pulled up the state registry on the library desktop right there. My mom had bookmarked it on every device. His face popped up immediately. Look, Robert Gary, he's not supposed to be near kids. She actually closed the laptop screen on my fingers. Not hard, but firm. 9-year-olds don't understand these things. Mr. Gary passed our background check, and I won't have you spreading rumors. The kindergartners were already lining up outside the reading room, their teacher dropping them off like always. My chest felt tight watching Miss Lyons walk Mr. Gary over to them, her hand on his shoulder like they were old friends. Children, this is Mr. Gary. He'll be reading to you today while I catch up on some work. She left him alone with them. 8 5-year-olds and a man whose photo I'd just shown her on an offender registry, and she just left. I texted my mom frantically, but she was in a work meeting. I stood by the window, pretending to organize books, but really watching him through the glass. He was sitting too close to this little girl, Ellie. I knew her from reading time. She always wore these sparkly hair clips. He kept touching them, telling her how pretty they were. The other librarian, Mr. Jones, walked by and I grabbed his sleeve. Something's wrong with the new volunteer. Miss Lyons said she's handling it, he said, not even slowing down. That's when I saw Mr. Gary stand up, taking Ellie's hand. Through the window, I could see he was mouthing something about a puppy in his van. Ellie's whole face lit up. Mr. Gary was crouching down now, whispering something that made her nod excitedly. He started walking toward the door, Ellie skipping beside him. I ran around to the door, but it was locked from the inside. Standard procedure, Mrs. Lyons always said, to keep random people from wandering into story time. Mr. Gary was reaching for the door handle now, his other hand on Ellie's lower back. I sprinted back to Miss Lyons' desk. He's taking Ellie outside! Right now. He's taking her to his van. She didn't even look up. Mr. Gary is probably just showing her something in the parking lot. Stop being dramatic. Please! I was crying now, I couldn't help it. Please just look. Go sit down before I call your mother. Mr. Gary had the door open. I could see the parking lot through the gap, his white van parked right by the exit. That's when I saw it, the fire alarm. I yanked it down hard. The shrieking noise made everyone jump. Ellie started crying as Mr. Gary let go of her hand, kids and teachers pouring out of every room. I ran to Ellie and pulled her into the main evacuation line, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might throw up. The principal arrived with 2 police officers before the fire department. Someone must have seen Mr. Gary heading for the exit with Ellie and called it in. When they ran his ID, the officer's face went dark. I heard him radio something about registered offender on school property. Miss Lyons was talking fast to the officers, her face all red and flustered. She has an overactive imagination, she kept saying, pointing at me. She's always making up stories about people. I think she wanted attention. The officer turned to me, and I showed him everything on my phone. The screenshots my mom had taken, the timestamps of my texts, even a photo I'd snapped of the registry on the library computer showing 2:48 p.m., 13 minutes before I pulled the alarm. Then Ellie, still crying, told the officer in her tiny voice. He said it would be our secret. Miss Lyons' face went white. How was I supposed to know? Kids say things all the time. But when the police searched Mr. Gary's van, they found something that made them immediately arrest Miss Lyons too. The fire trucks are still sitting outside when I see the police officers putting handcuffs on both Mr. Gary and Ms. Lyons. Miss Lyons is yelling something about lawsuits and false accusations, while Mr. Gary just stares at the ground like he's given up. I'm holding Ellie's hand so tight that she asks me to let go a little, so I loosen my grip but don't let go completely. My legs feel shaky and I keep watching the officers load them into separate police cars. Miss Lyons looks at me through the window with this angry face that makes my stomach hurt. Mom arrives within 10 minutes of the alarm, running across the parking lot with her phone still in her hand. She wraps me in a hug that feels like she's never letting go, squeezing so hard I can barely breathe. Then she immediately starts asking the officers what happened, her voice high and scared. One of them separates us gently, his hand on Mom's shoulder, and explains they need to take statements from all the kids before parents can leave. Mom nods but keeps her hand on my back the whole time. A woman officer crouches down to my level and asks if I have my phone with me. I pull it from my pocket with trembling fingers and show her the screenshots Mom took of the registry. She looks at each one carefully, then asks about the timestamps of my texts to Mom. I show her those too, and even the photo I snapped of the library computer screen showing 2:48 p.m., 13 minutes before I pulled the alarm. She bags my phone in a clear plastic evidence bag and writes down everything carefully in a small notebook. Her pen moves fast across the paper and she asks me to spell Mr. Gary's name twice to make sure she has it right. She tells me I did good keeping records and that it will help a lot. The other officers are talking to the kindergartners one by one, and I can see Ellie pointing at Mr. Gary's police car. Detective Jensen introduces himself later that afternoon at the police station, speaking quietly and showing me his badge up close so I know he's real. His badge has a gold star on it and his name is engraved at the bottom. He explains that what I did was brave and smart, and now he needs to understand exactly what I saw and when. His voice is calm and he doesn't rush me, which makes it easier to breathe normally again. He has kind eyes that remind me of my grandpa, and he lets me take breaks when I need to. We sit in a small room with soft chairs, and he offers me water twice. By evening, kids at the school are already texting their parents, and somehow the story gets twisted into me making things up for attention. Mom shows me her phone where parents are posting in the school group chat. Mrs. Lyons is apparently telling anyone who will listen that I'm a troubled child who misunderstood an innocent situation. The fact that she's in custody doesn't seem to stop people from believing her version over mine. One post says I probably watched too many crime shows and got paranoid. Another says 9-year-olds shouldn't be exposed to sex offender registries because it makes them see danger everywhere. Mom's jaw gets tight reading them, and she puts her phone face down on the table. Detective Jensen calls Mom that same evening with an update that makes her face go pale. They found printed emails in Mr. Gary's van between him and Ms. Lyons discussing special reading time schedules. There's also a staff badge with Ms. Lyons' signature that gave him building access after hours. Mom's hand starts shaking as she listens, and she has to sit down. Detective Jensen tells her there's a handwritten note with the library's backdoor code in Mrs. Lyons' handwriting too. Mom asks him to repeat that part twice, like she can't believe what she's hearing. After she hangs up, she just stares at the wall for a long time before telling me what he said. The school district releases a statement the next morning that's full of words like alleged incident and thorough review of procedures. They don't mention that a 9-year-old had to pull a fire alarm because adults ignored her warnings. Mom reads it out loud at breakfast and her hands shake with anger. She keeps stopping to take deep breaths, and I can tell she wants to throw something. The statement talks about their commitment to student safety, but never actually apologizes. It says they're reviewing their volunteer screening process, but makes it sound like this was just bad luck. Mom calls the superintendent's office 3 times that morning, but keeps getting sent to voicemail. Some parents at the school pickup start giving me weird looks and whispering when I walk by. I can hear them talking even though they think they're being quiet. One mom actually walks up to Mom and tells her I caused unnecessary panic and traumatized the kindergartners with the alarm noise. She says her daughter had nightmares about fire drills now. Mom's response involves words I'm not supposed to repeat, but I feel proud of her anyway. The other mom's face goes red and she walks away fast. 2 other parents who were listening look uncomfortable and pretend they weren't watching. Kinley Mullins from Child Protective Services comes to our house 2 days later to explain what a forensic interview is. She has kind eyes and brings a stuffed dog that she says I can hold during the interview if it helps. The dog is soft and brown with floppy ears. She explains that she's on my side and her job is to make sure kids are heard and believed. She talks to me like I'm a regular person, not like I'm too young to understand things. She asks if I have any questions and waits patiently while I think. Mom makes us hot chocolate, and Kinley tells me the interview room is designed to feel safe and comfortable. The forensic interview happens at a special room that's painted cheerful colors but still feels serious. There are toys in the corner and comfortable chairs, but I can tell this is where important things happen. Detective Jensen watches through a one-way mirror, and Kinley explains that he needs to see everything, but she'll be the only one asking questions. She asks me to describe everything I remember about that afternoon, starting from when Mr. Gary first arrived. I tell her about showing Miss Lyons the registry on the computer, about watching Mr. Gary through the window touching Ellie's hair clips, about Mr. Jones brushing me off when I tried to warn him. I describe seeing Mr. Gary take Ellie's hand and mouth something about a puppy, about running to the locked door and then sprinting back to Ms. Lyons' desk. Kinley writes notes the whole time but keeps her eyes on me so I know she's really listening. When I get to the part about pulling the fire alarm, my voice cracks a little, but I keep going. She tells me I can stop anytime I need to, but I want to finish telling her everything while it's fresh in my mind. When the interview finishes, Kinley walks me back to the waiting room where Mom stands up so fast her chair scrapes against the floor. Mom hugs me tight and asks if I'm okay, and I nod even though my throat feels raw from talking so much. Detective Jensen comes out a few minutes later and shakes Mom's hand and tells her I did really well, and that my statement will help the case. The drive home is quiet, except for Mom asking if I want ice cream, and me saying yes, even though I don't really feel hungry. School at the end of that first week feels like walking into a room where everyone was just talking about you. Kids stare at me in the hallway, and I can see them whispering behind their hands, and some of them look away fast when I catch them watching. The news vans are still parked outside the main entrance with their big satellite dishes pointed at the sky, and reporters standing around drinking coffee. My teacher, Mrs. R. Palmer, has to stop class twice to tell students not to ask me questions about what happened at the library. During lunch, I try to sit at my usual table, but the conversations go quiet when I get close, so I end up eating in the library office with the door closed, because the cafeteria feels too loud, and too many eyes are watching. The librarian lets me sit at her desk and doesn't ask any questions, which I appreciate more than she probably knows. 3 days after the forensic interview, a woman named Alma Taylor comes to our house, and Mom introduces her as the assistant district attorney. Alma has short dark hair and carries a leather briefcase that she sets on our coffee table before sitting down. She explains that she's prosecuting the case against both Mr. Gary and Ms. Lyons, and needs to walk us through what charges they're facing. Mr. Aguirre will definitely face charges for attempted kidnapping and being on the school property as a registered offender, she says, while pulling papers from her briefcase. Miss Lyons' case is more complicated because they have to prove she knew what she was enabling, and that's harder to show in court. Mom asks what happens if they can't prove it, and Alma pauses for a long moment before saying that Mrs. Lyons might only face lesser charges, or possibly walk free. The pause tells us everything we need to know about how uncertain this all is. Alma spreads documents across the table showing timelines and evidence lists, and Mom studies them carefully while I sit on the couch feeling small and useless. Mom takes me to see Hannah Bay the following week, and Hannah's office is nothing like I expected. There are soft chairs in colors like blue and green, and a whole box of fidget toys sitting on the side table, including spinners and squishy balls, and these weird mesh tubes you can turn inside out. Hannah has glasses and a kind smile, and she doesn't make me talk about the library right away, which surprises me. Instead, we practice breathing exercises where I put one hand on my chest and one on my stomach, and try to breathe so only my stomach hand moves. She teaches me what to do when my heart starts racing for no reason by counting things I can see in the room or pressing my feet hard into the floor. We spend almost the whole hour just learning these techniques, and Hannah says trauma makes our bodies react in ways our brains don't always understand. Before we leave, she gives me a small, smooth stone to keep in my pocket that I can touch whenever I need to remember the breathing exercises. I see Ellie and her mom at the school pickup during the second week, and my stomach drops when I spot them near the fence. Ellie's mom sees us at the same time and immediately grabs Ellie's hand and starts walking the other direction toward the far parking lot. Ellie looks back at me with confused eyes, and I wonder if her parents told her what almost happened, or if they're keeping it secret to protect her. Mom notices too, and her jaw gets tight, but she doesn't say anything until we're in the car. Some families need space to process, she tells me while starting the engine, but it feels like they blame me somehow for making everything scary and real. I watch Ellie's mom rush her into their car through the side mirror and feel a weird mix of sad and angry that I can't quite sort out. The preliminary hearing happens 3 weeks after the fire alarm, and Mom takes me even though Alma said I don't have to testify yet. The courthouse has tall ceilings and marble floors that make every sound echo, and security guards check our bags before we can go through the metal detectors. Miss Lyons sits at a table in an orange jumpsuit with her hands folded in front of her, and I almost don't recognize her without her usual cardigan and reading glasses. When her lawyer says she pleads not guilty, Ms. Lyons nods like she actually believes it, like she really thinks she didn't do anything wrong. I squeeze Mom's hand hard enough that my knuckles turn white, and she squeezes back just as hard. The judge talks about bail and evidence and trial dates in words I don't fully understand, but Mom's face stays tight and focused the whole time. Miss Lyons' lawyer, Craig Mott, stands up to argue for bail and tells the judge that I'm a child with an overactive imagination who misinterpreted a volunteer helping a student. He says the background check cleared Mr. Gary, so Miss Lyons had no reason to doubt him and that she was just following district procedures. He makes it sound like I'm the problem, not the registered sex offender who tried to take a 5-year-old to his van, and I feel my face get hot with anger. Craig keeps talking about how Ms. Lyons has deep community ties and no criminal history and poses no flight risk. The prosecutor argues back that the evidence shows Ms. Lyons enabled a predator, but the judge sets bail anyway, and I watch Ms. Lyons walk out of the courtroom with her lawyer 2 hours later. Mom has to pull me away from the window because I'm staring so hard trying to understand how someone who did what she did gets to just leave. Kinley comes to our house again a few days later to prepare me for the possibility that I might have to testify at trial. She brings the stuffed dog from before and sets it on the couch between us, while explaining what a courtroom is like and how lawyers ask questions. She teaches me grounding techniques like pressing my feet into the floor until I can feel the pressure, or counting things I can see in the room when I start feeling panicky. We practice saying I don't remember if I'm asked something I'm not sure about because she says it's okay not to know everything, and making up answers is worse than admitting you don't know. Kinley has me practice looking at her while she asks hard questions, and staying calm even when the questions feel mean or unfair. We spend 2 hours going through different scenarios, and by the end my head hurts, but I feel a little more ready for whatever comes next. Detective Jensen calls on a Tuesday afternoon and Mom puts him on speaker so I can hear too. His voice sounds different, more excited than usual, and he tells us they found something important in Mr. Gary's van folder. There's a printed memo with the library's backdoor security code, and Mr. Lyons' signature at the bottom, he says, and also a roster of kindergarten reading time participants with Ellie's name circled in red ink. The handwriting matches samples they took from Missy Lyons' desk, which means she was directly involved in planning access for Mr. Gary. Mom's hand starts shaking while she holds the phone and she has to sit down on the kitchen chair. Detective Jensen says this changes everything because it proves Miss Lyons wasn't just negligent, she was actively helping Mr. Gary get to specific kids. After Mom hangs up, she stares at the wall for a long time before telling me what this means for the case, and I can see her hands are still shaking. The school board holds a closed meeting that Mom isn't allowed to attend, but she hears from another parent that they spent most of the time talking about liability insurance instead of what went wrong. The risk manager apparently said their priority is protecting the district from lawsuits, not discussing how a registered sex offender ended up volunteering with kindergartners. Mom makes a lot of angry phone calls that night to board members and the superintendent, and I can hear her voice getting louder through my bedroom wall. She keeps saying things about accountability and children's safety and how insurance money won't fix what almost happened. When she finally comes to say goodnight, her eyes are red and tired, but she tells me she's not giving up on making them take responsibility. A reporter named Emily Rowland publishes the first article about the case on Friday morning, and suddenly our phone won't stop ringing. The article has details about Mr. Gary's history and the evidence found in his van, and quotes from unnamed sources about the investigation. Mom's phone buzzes constantly with calls from other reporters and people we don't know, and she finally turns it off after lunch. The article gets shared online, and the comments section fills up with people arguing about whether I'm a hero or a troublemaker who caused unnecessary panic. One person writes that 9-year-olds shouldn't have access to sex offender registries because it makes them paranoid about normal adults. Another person says I probably made the whole thing up for attention, and that Ms. Lyons is the real victim of a witch hunt. Mom reads some of the comments out loud at dinner and gets so angry she slams her laptop shut and tells me I'm never allowed to read them. I sneak onto the computer later that night anyway, and read through dozens of comments before Mom catches me and unplugs the router. The next week, Mom starts leaving for work later and coming home earlier than she used to. I notice because she's always been gone before I wake up for school, but now she's making me breakfast at the kitchen table. She tells me she talked to her boss about flexible hours so she can take me to all the appointments with Alma and Detective Jensen and Hannah. I hear her on the phone with the electric company one afternoon when I'm supposed to be doing homework. Her voice sounds tired and small, asking if they can give her until next month to pay the full bill. She promises she's good for it and just needs a little more time. I pretend I'm focused on my math worksheet, but I'm really listening to every word. That night, I hear crying coming from her bedroom after she thinks I'm asleep. I stand in the hallway with my hand on the doorknob, but I don't go in because I don't know what to say about being the reason everything costs so much money. Mom tells me at breakfast a few weeks later that Ellie transferred to a different school across town. She says Ellie's parents think a fresh start will be good for her. I ask if I can call Ellie to say goodbye, but Mom shakes her head and explains that Ellie's family needs space right now to help her heal. I write Ellie a letter anyway on my best stationery with the sparkly borders. I tell her I'm sorry the fire alarm was so loud and scary and that I hope she's okay. I write that I miss seeing her at reading time and talking about our favorite books. I fold it carefully and put it in an envelope with her name on the front. Mom finds it on my desk and sits down next to me. She says maybe we can send it later when Ellie's family is ready, but right now they need privacy. The letter stays in my desk drawer, and sometimes I take it out and read it when I'm feeling lonely. I wonder if Ellie still wears those sparkly hair clips, or if they remind her too much of that day. Alma calls on a Tuesday afternoon and Mom puts her on speaker so I can hear. Her voice sounds different from usual. She explains that Mr. Gary's lawyer contacted her about a plea deal to avoid going to trial. If he pleads guilty to some of the charges, they'll recommend a shorter sentence, and I won't have to testify in court. But it also means some details about what he planned might never become public record. Mom asks what I think, and I stare at the phone not knowing what to say. Part of me feels relieved I won't have to sit in a courtroom and answer questions with everyone staring at me. But another part feels cheated, like he's getting away with something even though he'll still go to prison. I tell Alma I need to think about it. She says that's okay and we can talk more at our next meeting. After she hangs up, I go to my room and lie on my bed staring at the ceiling. Both options feel scary in different ways, and I hate that I have to choose. Detective Jensen calls a few days later with news that makes Mom's face turn red. She has to sit down at the kitchen table and grip the edge hard with both hands. He tells us that 2 years ago, another librarian filed a complaint about Mr. Gary being too friendly with young girls during story time. The complaint described him sitting too close and touching their hair and asking them personal questions. But the report was marked as unfounded and filed away without any real investigation. Mom asks who reviewed the complaint, and Detective Jensen says it was Ms. Lyons. She was the supervisor who decided it didn't need follow-up. Mom's hands start shaking, and she asks Detective Jensen to repeat that part. He does, and adds that if Missy Lyons had done her job back then, Mr. Gary would never have been allowed near the library again. Mom thanks him for the information and hangs up. She sits at the table for a long time, just breathing hard and staring at nothing. When she finally looks at me, her eyes are wet and angry. She says some people don't deserve to work with children, and Ms. Lyons is one of them. The principal calls Mom the following week about an upcoming school assembly on library safety. She suggests in a voice that's trying to sound kind that I might be more comfortable sitting it out. Mom's face gets that look it gets when she's trying not to yell. She tells the principal very clearly that I'll be attending every school event I want to attend. The principal starts to say something about other students feeling uncomfortable, but Mom cuts her off. She says if anyone has a problem with me being there, they can take it up with her directly. After she hangs up, she asks if I actually want to go to the assembly. I think about hiding in the nurse's office while everyone else learns about safety rules I already know. But then I think about Miss Lyons telling me to sit down and be quiet. I tell Mom I want to go. She nods and says she's proud of me. The day of the assembly, I sit in the front row with my head up while kids whisper behind me. The principal talks about new volunteer screening procedures without ever mentioning why they're necessary. I count the ceiling tiles and practice my breathing exercises until it's over. Hannah asks me during our next session how I'm feeling about pulling the fire alarm. I tell her some people at the school think I overreacted and caused problems for no reason. She nods and doesn't look surprised. Then she asks me what would have happened if I hadn't pulled it. I think about Mr. Gary's hand on Ellie's back and his van in the parking lot, and Ellie's excited face when he mentioned the puppy. I tell Hannah that Ellie might be gone. Hannah nods again and says that's the only thing that matters. She explains that sometimes doing the right thing makes people uncomfortable or angry, but that doesn't make it wrong. The guilt in my chest gets a little lighter when she says that. It doesn't disappear completely, but it feels less heavy than before. I practice saying out loud that I did the right thing, even though it was scary. Hannah makes me say it 5 times until my voice sounds like I believe it. I see Miss Lyons at the grocery store 2 weeks later when Mom and I are buying milk and cereal. She's in the produce section looking at apples. Her hair is different, and she's wearing regular clothes instead of her librarian outfits, but I recognize her immediately. She looks up and sees me at the same time. Her eyes go cold and hard, and she just stares at me across the vegetables. Mom notices where I'm looking and immediately steps between us. She takes my hand and we walk quickly to the checkout without getting everything on our list. In the parking lot, Mom calls Detective Jensen and tells him what happened. He asks if Miss Lyons said anything or came near us. Mom says no, but the way she looked at me felt threatening. Detective Jensen says, Miss Lyons isn't supposed to be anywhere near me as part of her bond conditions. He makes a note to tell Alma so the prosecutor knows Ms. Lyons violated the order. Mom keeps checking the rearview mirror the whole drive home to make sure no one is following us. The school sends a letter to all parents about enhanced safety measures the next month. Mom reads it out loud at dinner with a bitter laugh in her voice. The letter talks about new fingerprint background checks and continuous monitoring of volunteers. It uses words like proactive and comprehensive, without ever admitting the old system failed. There's no mention of how a registered sex offender ended up volunteering with kindergartners, or why it took a 9-year-old to stop him. Mom finishes reading and drops the letter on the table. She says it's a nice piece of fiction. Later, I see her in her office framing the letter and hanging it on the wall next to her desk. When I ask why, she says it's a reminder that institutions protect themselves before they protect kids. I don't fully understand what she means, but I can tell she's still angry about it. Emily sends Mom an email asking if I'd be willing to do an on-the-record interview about what happened. She promises to be sensitive and let me tell my story in my own words. Mom reads the email twice, then deletes it without responding. She tells me she's protecting me from more attention and stress. I can tell part of her wishes people could hear my side of things directly, instead of through police reports and court documents. That night, I hear her crying in her room again. I feel guilty for causing so many problems and making everything so hard. I want to tell her I'm sorry, but I don't know how to apologize for doing the right thing. I lie in bed counting the glow in the dark stars on my ceiling until I finally fall asleep. Alma calls the next week with news about Mr. Gary. He accepted a plea deal that includes charges for attempted kidnapping and being on the school property as a registered offender. His sentencing is scheduled for next month. Alma explains this means I definitely won't have to testify against him in court. I feel relieved that I don't have to sit in front of him and answer questions. But I also feel cheated, like he's getting away with something even though he's going to prison for years. Mom asks what the sentence will probably be, and Alma says likely 8 to 12 years. It sounds like a long time, but I keep thinking about Ellie and what almost happened. I wonder if 12 years is enough for trying to take a little girl to his van. Alma says I can write a victim impact statement that the judge will read even if I don't testify. I tell her I'll think about it. After we hang up, I go to my room and close the door. I sit on my bed feeling relieved and angry and guilty all at the same time. Kinley comes over 3 days later with a special notebook that has lines for writing and a picture of a tree on the cover. She sits on the floor of my room with me and explains that a victim impact statement is my chance to tell the judge how what happened affected me. I don't have to read it out loud in court, she says, but the judge will read every word before deciding on sentencing. We start with easy questions about what I remember feeling that day at the library, and I tell her about my hands shaking when I tried to show Mrs. Lyons the computer screen. Kinley writes down everything I say without changing my words or making them sound more grown up. When I tell her about the nightmares where I'm running toward the fire alarm but my legs won't move fast enough, she stops writing for a second and just nods like she understands. The statement takes 2 hours to finish, and by the end my hand hurts from gripping the pencil so tight. Kinley reads it back to me to make sure it sounds like my actual voice, then puts it in a folder with my name on it. I slide the folder under my bed next to my journal, and I don't tell anyone except Mom that it's there. A week later, Mom gets a call from Alma about Ms. Lyons filing a lawsuit against the school district. Ms. Lyons is claiming she followed all the proper procedures, and the district is just making her a scapegoat to avoid their own responsibility. The district fires back with their own legal filing about negligence and breach of duty, and suddenly there are lawyers arguing about who failed worse. Alma explains over the phone that this civil lawsuit is separate from the criminal case, but Mom keeps saying it feels like everyone cares more about protecting their money than about what almost happened to Ellie. I listen from the hallway and wonder if anyone besides us remembers that this whole thing is about a 5-year-old girl who almost got taken. The next day, an envelope arrives from the district's risk manager with an official-looking letter inside. Mom reads it once, then twice, then a third time before her face goes red. The letter offers to pay for all my therapy sessions with Hannah if Mom signs a paper promising not to talk about the case publicly or sue the district later. Mom stares at the letter for a long minute, then tears it into small pieces and drops them in the trash. She calls the risk manager back and tells him we don't accept hush money, and I hear her voice shaking with anger through the phone. I feel proud of her for saying no, even though I know the therapy bills are stacking up on her desk. She doesn't think I noticed the envelopes marked past due, but I see them when I'm getting pencils from her office. The money stress starts showing up in other ways too. Mom snaps at me for leaving my backpack on the floor, then apologizes 5 minutes later. I start getting stomach aches before school that make me want to stay home, and Mom has to call me in sick twice in 1 week. During my next appointment, Hannah suggests a family session where Mom and I can talk about how the case is affecting both of us, instead of pretending everything is fine. We sit on Hannah's couch together, and Hannah asks us each to say one thing that's been hard. Mom starts crying and says she's sorry for making me worry about adult problems like money and lawyers. I cry too and tell her I feel guilty for causing so many problems by pulling the fire alarm. Hannah hands us both tissues and helps us understand that none of this is my fault, and that Mom is allowed to be stressed without me feeling responsible. Things get a little better after that session. Mom stops trying to hide the bills, and I stop pretending the stomach aches aren't real. 2 weeks later, I open our mailbox after school and find an envelope with no return address, and my name written in blocky letters. Inside is a note on plain white paper that just says, "Liars get what they deserve." My hands start shaking as I bring it inside to show Mom. She calls Detective Jensen immediately, and he drives over within 20 minutes to bag the note as evidence. He asks if we've noticed anyone following us or watching the house, and Mom mentions the car that's been parked down the street some evenings. Detective Jensen makes notes and promises to increase patrol cars driving past our house. That night, I check every lock on every door and window 3 times before bed, and Mom doesn't tell me to stop. I lie awake listening for sounds outside and wondering who sent the note. Meanwhile, Emily files something called Freedom of Information Act requests to get copies of the old complaint about Mr. Gary and internal emails about how the district screens volunteers. The district responds by citing privacy exemptions and refusing to release most of the documents she asked for. Emily appeals the decision, and Mom explains to me over breakfast that this is how reporters hold powerful people accountable, even when those people don't want to cooperate. I ask why the district won't just show the emails if they have nothing to hide, and Mom says that's exactly the right question. 8 months after I pulled the fire alarm, Ellie's mom finally returns one of Mom's many phone calls. Mom's face goes pale as she listens, and when she hangs up, she sits down at the kitchen table and puts her head in her hands. Ellie has been having nightmares, her mom explains, and started seeing a therapist who helped her remember things she'd forgotten. It turns out Miss Lyons had arranged several special reading times with just Ellie and Mr. Aguirre before that day, sessions that seemed normal to Ellie at the time, but now she understands weren't normal at all. The therapist used special techniques to help Ellie remember without planting false memories, and everything Ellie described matched patterns that Mr. Aguirre had used before. Mom calls Alma right away to report what Ellie's mom told her, and Alma says this new disclosure changes everything about Ms. Lyons' case. Within a week, Alma files additional charges of child endangerment and accessory to attempted kidnapping against Ms. Lyons. The evidence that Ms. Lyons deliberately created opportunities for Mr. Gary to be alone with Ellie makes the case much stronger than before. Mom cries when Alma calls with the news, and I can't tell if she's crying from relief that justice might actually happen or from sadness about what Ellie went through in those special reading sessions. Probably both. At the school, some of the parents who blamed me for causing drama start getting quieter as more evidence becomes public. A few even apologize to Mom at pickup, saying they didn't understand the full situation before. They don't apologize directly to me, though, just to Mom like I'm not standing right there. The whispers in the hallway change from troublemaker to that poor kid, which somehow doesn't feel much better than before. I still eat lunch in the library office because the cafeteria feels too loud. Then Emily publishes a new article with internal emails she finally got through her appeal. The emails show that the school board knew their background check system was inadequate, but delayed upgrades to save money in the budget. One board member even wrote that the risk of something bad happening was low enough to accept. That board member resigns the same day the article comes out. Mom reads the whole article out loud at dinner with satisfaction in her voice, and I understand for the first time that sometimes the truth takes months to come out, but it does eventually come out if people keep pushing. I buy a composition notebook the next day and start writing everything down. The date goes at the top of each page, then what happened and when it happened and who said what. Hannah tells me during our next session that this gives me control over my own story instead of letting other people tell it for me. Detective Jensen stops by the house and sees me writing in it at the kitchen table, and he says, "Keeping good records is a skill that will help me my whole life." The first notebook fills up in 3 weeks. Mom buys me 3 more at the store, different colors so I can tell them apart. I write about the whispers at the school, about Emily's articles, about the nightmares I still have sometimes where I can't reach the fire alarm fast enough. Writing it down makes it feel less like it's bouncing around inside my head with nowhere to go. Alma calls in early November to say the trial date got set for February. Mom puts the phone on speaker so I can hear too. Craig Mott filed something that signals he's going to attack how the police collected evidence from the van instead of trying to say Ms. Lyons is innocent. Alma explains, this is what defense lawyers do when the evidence against their client is really strong. They look for technical problems with how it was gathered. I practice my breathing exercises that night before bed, the ones Hannah taught me. In through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 4, out through the mouth for 4. The trial is still months away, but my chest gets tight just thinking about having to sit in that courtroom. Mom sits me down after Thanksgiving and says she thinks I should switch schools when winter break ends. The stares and whispers at my current school haven't gotten better, and she found a good school 20 minutes away where nobody knows about the fire alarm or the case. I don't want to leave my teacher, but I also don't want to keep eating lunch alone in the library office anymore. The first day at the new school in January feels weird and good at the same time. Nobody points at me in the hallway. Nobody whispers when I walk past. I can breathe normally again, like my lungs have more space. I miss my old teacher, though, the way she used to let me help organize the classroom library. Hannah's sessions start changing around the same time. She says we're shifting from crisis management to building skills I'll need for years. We practice what to do when I see someone who reminds me of Mr. Gary. Like how to check if I'm actually in danger, or if my brain is just being extra careful. She teaches me scripts for handling questions if new friends eventually learn about the case. We role-play different scenarios until I can get through them without my voice shaking. The sessions feel less about what happened, and more about how to keep living after something scary happens. I like that better, even though it's still hard work. The pretrial hearing happens on a cold morning in late January. Alma looks frustrated when she calls Mom afterward. The judge excluded some evidence on technical grounds about how it was collected from the van. Something about the search warrant paperwork not being filled out exactly right. Alma says the core evidence is still solid. The emails and the badge and the door code memo. Mom tries to explain to me over dinner that trials have a lot of rules that sometimes protect guilty people, and that's just how the system works even when it's not fair. I hate the system a little bit. I hate that Mr. Gary and Ms. Lyons get all these protections and rules working for them when Ellie didn't get any protection at all. The trial starts on a Monday morning in February, when it's so cold outside that my breath makes clouds. I have to testify about what I saw and what I did. Kinley sits in the front row of the courtroom where I can see her, and I hold the stuffed dog she gave me all those months ago. The bailiff swears me in and I promise to tell the truth. Alma asks me questions in a gentle voice. I tell the judge about the registry website Mom showed me, about recognizing Mr. Gary's face with the scar, about walking straight to Missy Lyons' desk to warn her. I describe showing her the computer screen with his photo right there, about her closing the laptop on my fingers. I explain watching through the window as Mr. Gary took Ellie's hand and started walking toward the door, about the fire alarm being my only choice left. My hands shake while I talk, but I keep going. The judge watches me the whole time with a serious face. Craig Mott stands up for cross-examination and his voice is different from Alma's, sharper somehow. He asks if I really understood what I was seeing that day, or if maybe I got confused about what Mr. Gary was doing. He suggests that maybe I wanted attention, or wanted to be a hero, that 9-year-olds sometimes make up stories. I stick to what Hannah taught me during practice sessions. I just describe exactly what I saw without guessing at why people did things. I saw Mr. Gary's photo on the registry. I showed it to Miss Lyons. I watched him take Ellie's hand toward the exit. I pulled the fire alarm. Those are facts, not guesses. My voice shakes when Craig asks if I like making adults look bad, but I don't cry. I press my feet into the floor the way Hannah taught me and I don't cry. The prosecution shows the jury evidence the next day. They pass around printed emails between Mr. Gary and Ms. Lyons discussing special reading time schedules. They show the staff badge with Miss Lyons' signature that gave him building access. They display the handwritten note with the library's backdoor code in Miss Lyons' handwriting. Then they play a recording of Ellie's forensic interview on speakers in the courtroom. Her little 5-year-old voice talks about the secret Mr. Gary mentioned, about how he said not to tell anyone about the puppy in his van. Several jurors lean forward with angry faces when they hear that. One woman juror wipes her eyes. Miss Lyons stares down at the table the whole time and won't look up, not even when her own lawyer touches her shoulder. Miss Lyons' defense brings in witnesses on Thursday. 3 different people talk about her 20 years working in libraries, her spotless record before this, all the reading programs she organized. Craig emphasizes over and over that she followed the background check procedures the district gave her, that she had no way of knowing Mr. Gary would be dangerous since he passed the official check. He makes it sound like she's a victim of a broken system instead of someone who enabled a predator. He talks about how she dedicated her career to helping children discover books. He never mentions that she ignored a 9-year-old's warning or dismissed an earlier complaint about Mr. Gary. The character witnesses make her sound like a nice person who made an innocent mistake, not someone who gave a registered offender access to kindergartners. Closing arguments happen on Friday afternoon. Alma stands in front of the jury and lays out everything in order. Miss Lyons ignored a 9-year-old's direct warning about a registered sex offender. She dismissed a previous staff complaint about Mr. Gary's behavior. She provided him with building access through a staff badge and security codes. She created multiple opportunities for him to be alone with young children, including special reading sessions with just him and Ellie. Alma's voice gets stronger as she talks, and she looks each juror in the eye. Craig argues that mistakes aren't crimes, that Miss Lyons never intended harm, that she was trying to give someone a second chance. He says the real villain is Mr. Gary, not Mr. Lyons. He asks the jury if they've ever made a mistake at work and suggests that Ms. Lyons shouldn't go to jail for trusting the wrong person. The jury gets the case right before the weekend starts. The judge tells them to go home and come back Monday to begin deliberations. The jury comes back on Monday afternoon. Mom and I sit in the front row while the judge reads the verdict form out loud. Guilty on child endangerment. Guilty on evidence tampering. Not guilty on accessory to attempted kidnapping. Alma leans over the railing afterward and explains that the jury believed Miss Lyons was careless and tried to hide her mistakes, but they couldn't prove she knew Mr. Gary planned to take Ellie that exact day. Mom squeezes my hand so tight it hurts when the verdict gets read. Miss Lyons stares straight ahead with no expression on her face. The sentencing hearing happens 3 weeks later in the same courtroom. The judge gives Miss R. Lyons 18 months in county jail and takes away her teaching and library licenses forever. She can never work with kids again. I sit next to Hannah in the gallery and watch Miss Lyons get led away in handcuffs. Later that afternoon in Hannah's office, I tell her I'm mad about the sentence. 18 months feels like nothing compared to what could have happened to Ellie. Hannah nods and says feeling angry doesn't mean I did anything wrong. The anger sits heavy in my chest anyway, like something I can't put down. The school district settles the civil case 4 months after the sentencing. Mom shows me the letter explaining they'll pay for policy reforms and give our family and Ellie's family some money without making us sign papers saying we can't talk about it. Mom uses part of the money to pay off all the therapy bills that piled up. She puts the rest in my college fund. The settlement letter talks about moving forward, but never actually says sorry for what happened. Emily writes another article about the new volunteer screening rules and mandatory training for library workers. Mom asked her to keep my name out of it, so the article focuses on how the system failed instead of telling individual stories. I feel relieved to stay anonymous. Part of me wishes people knew that a kid figured out what all the adults missed, but mostly I'm just tired of being noticed. We moved to a new town the summer after 5th grade ends. Mom found a better job that pays more money and makes things less tight at home. The new house has strong locks on every door and a security system that beeps when windows open. I sleep better knowing the house is protected. I make friends at my new school who don't know anything about fire alarms or libraries or trials. They just know me as the kid who likes reading and is pretty good at math. 3 years pass before I hear from Ellie again. Kinley forwards me an email one afternoon when I'm 12 years old. The message is short and says Ellie wanted to thank me for keeping her safe that day. She doesn't ask to meet up or stay in touch. She just wanted me to know she's okay now and taking karate classes. I read the email 5 times in a row. Then I save it in a special folder on my computer where I keep important things. Kinley visits our house a few weeks after Ellie's email arrives. She tells Mom and me that my case helped push through new laws across the whole state. All libraries and schools have to do better background checks on volunteers now. Staff members have to take training about reporting concerns. Kinley says sometimes one person being brave changes things for everyone who comes after. I feel proud when she says that, but I also feel tired from carrying this story for so long. I decide to write everything down in my own words. I work on it for weeks in a notebook Hannah gave me, making sure every detail is right. Hannah says this is me taking control of what happened instead of letting other people tell it wrong. I write about being 9 and scared and pulling the alarm. I write about adults not believing me and about Ellie almost getting taken. I keep it anonymous but make sure it's all true. The writing helps me feel like the story belongs to me now. I'm not completely healed and maybe never will be. Hannah says that's okay and normal, but I have tools now for managing the hard days when my chest gets tight or I can't sleep. I know how to spot red flags in adults who act wrong around kids. I trust my gut feelings even when other people say I'm overreacting. I can set boundaries when people make me uncomfortable. The nightmares about Mr. Gary and the van come less often now. I can walk past fire alarms in buildings without my heart racing. That feels like enough progress. Years later, when I'm in high school, I walk through the library in my new town looking for books for a project. I pass a fire alarm on the wall near the back exit. For just 1 second, I'm 9 years old again with shaking hands reaching up to pull it down. Then I blink and I'm back in the present, almost 16 and taller than I was. I reach out and touch the alarm gently, like saying thank you to the scared kid who trusted herself when nobody else would. I check out my books at the front desk and head home. I carry the story with me, but I don't let it carry me anymore. That's the full wrap-up. I always try to make sure these aren't just stories, but something you can carry into your own life. If even one idea stuck with you, that's a win. Subscribe so the next one finds you.